Welcome to part 2 of the Mary Lou Fulton Teachers College series on principled innovation and design. In the previous video, we talked about our model for design, which looks like this, and its relationship to principled innovation. In this video, we're going to keep the model in mind and highlight parts of it while we look at 3 different examples of how the two work together in practice. First, we'll look at how a new teacher can bring principled innovation and design to the challenge of teaching fractions to school children. Following that, we will explore how these ideas could play out in a school focusing on improving parent-school relationships. And next, a larger university setting where we will look at reimagining an entire teacher preparation program. Let's jump right in. Imagine you're a new teacher tasked with teaching students how to add fractions, something that always proves challenging. Bringing a principled innovation approach to this problem means that we first look at the context. This could be understanding the students, their understanding of math, their academic vocabulary, and prior experiences. How does language play into the context? And what languages do they speak at home? What do they believe about themselves as students and mathematicians? The context also includes the school. What resources are available to students in terms of technology? What could we use within the school to help teach students? And lastly, the school community. What cultural wealth do students bring with them to the classroom? Where do they see fractions in their daily life? Now that we have a better understanding of the context, let's look to the challenge itself. Clearly, given these rich contextual factors, there are lots of different ways in which we could approach teaching fractions. One strategy at this point is a pragmatic one, to put a frame around the problem. This is where we bring our expertise, experience, and judgment to the table. For instance, if we learn our students have had negative experiences with math, we might focus on creating a positive experience instead of focusing solely on the skill itself. Then our frame might be to design engaging activities that explore adding fractions. On the other hand, if the classroom has several English language learners who need to practice academic vocabulary, we may choose to frame the problem differently, maybe as a unit that supports students in verbally explaining their thinking about adding fractions. Now that we have an understanding of the context and we've put a frame around the problem, it's time to act. Action can take many different shapes and forms. One way is by building connections. We could connect to the context by building relationships and identifying common goals, both with students and the school community. We could also deepen our understanding of the problem space itself. For example, we could look at articles about teaching math or child development, or we could speak to a more experienced teacher in the school. We could also try and understand what children already know, maybe by giving them a pretest. Even while we're doing all of this, connecting with context and developing a better understanding of the content, we are continually imagining what could be, like thinking up new activities to help students represent their thinking about fractions, or imagining how students might interpret our words and actions, and maybe even trying to think of ways the unit might fail and what we could do to prevent that. And most importantly, we try and we iterate. Essentially, we take action, we try something out, study the results, and then revise. For example, we might start with designing a single activity and test it out with a small number of students. The results of that would determine whether or not we expand it to the broader class. Or we could try a small change with the entire group to work out any challenges that might come up as we plan out a broader vision. As we iterate and try and test our ideas out, it's important to communicate the reasons and the goals that are driving these changes. This may mean keeping administration and parents in the loop, as well as sharing work with other teachers so they can learn from it. Through this imaginative, iterative process, we can end up developing lesson plans and ideas to best serve the needs of our students. Knowing that design is never done, we need to be willing to go back to question our assumptions and processes in order to improve our final design. This was just one example of how we could use the principled innovation design process within the context of a K-12 classroom. Now let's look at how the model applies to other contexts. Let's pretend a school district has asked us to help them improve parent-school relationships. This project is similar to the new teacher example we discussed earlier. However, whereas before we were designing something for our students, this time we are helping others design something for their own challenges. We start again with context. In this case, our context is the school district and community we are working with, and within that is our problem space, parent-school relationships. We want to connect to the context and identify a common purpose, but to do that we need to narrow our focus and determine what the main challenges are. For that, we inquire into the problem and context of parent-school relationships. What are the barriers to building effective relationships? What have other schools and teachers found challenging? Maybe we discover that language is a significant barrier to the parent-school relationship, and we start there. We begin to frame our problem around communication in particular. Improve communication with parents by considering language barriers. We'll continue to refine this as we go along, and just like in the previous example, we need to reflect throughout the entire design process, both with our own understanding and taking into account the ideas and opinions of those we are designing with. We also imagine what a successful relationship might look like. Would it mean parents are more engaged in the classroom? Would it help students' academic performance? If a language barrier is what is standing in the way of a successful relationship, what if we identified parents fluent in multiple languages that could serve as liaisons between the school and the parents? We refine the frame of our problem to match what we've learned. Develop a parent-community liaison program to address language barriers. We then iterate. We try it out with one dual language parent who works with several other parents. Through continued reflection and inquiry into our results, we discover that the parent isn't prepared for the role and needs extra support. We go back to the drawing board and figure out a few different ways to address the challenge, but ultimately let's say we decide to try pairing that parent with a teacher, having them work together with the parents in that particular classroom. We try it out, reflect, and iterate again, developing a system of parent-teacher teams within each classroom. And as we work, we communicate, internally with those we are designing with, and with others who might benefit from our work, other teachers or schools, or even parents struggling to connect with the school and classroom. Similar approaches can be applied fruitfully to larger contexts as well, say a teacher preparation program within a university. Clearly, this is at a scale significantly larger than the other two we've discussed, but the same ideas and processes apply. Though we won't dig into this example as deeply, we begin as always by inquiring into the context and attempting to understand the challenges that new teachers and student teachers face. We try imagining the ways we could improve their experiences and what the impact of principled innovation-infused design could be on their teaching. Always remember that as the number of partners involved increases, the role of communication plays an even bigger role. We're no longer designing just for students or for their school and community. The impact of a project at this level has significant effects on the school districts the college partners with. This means the work of design needs to move across a range of contexts, each often with their own constraints and challenges. This makes continuous communication essential to creating a collective shared vision for the entire project. Although it might seem complicated at this point, the process is essentially similar to the ones described earlier, just at a larger scale with a larger number of elements. In conclusion, the design model we propose helps us design creative solutions to pressing educational issues, while staying grounded in the three guiding principles of principled innovation: to value individuals and account for the uniqueness of social and educational contexts in our work, to focus on caring for the well-being of others, and to create positive change, all through design.